From the very moment Elsa was born, cold wasn't just a part of her surroundings. It was part of her essence. Her parents, rulers of a small kingdom in the north, soon realized their daughter was not like other children. While other children cried for the warmth of an embrace, Elsa felt relief only when her parents moved away, allowing the air to cool around her. As a child, she discovered a sinister pleasure in manipulating ice and snow. There was no fear in her eyes, only fascination. Her creations were beautiful, yes, but always treacherous. Sharp shapes, ice claws, and flakes that cut like blades. Her parents, however, desperately tried to control and conceal her power, fearing what she might become. But Elsa didn't want to be controlled. She didn't see herself as an aberration. She saw herself as a goddess. In the dead of night, while her parents slept, she began secretly training her abilities. She created violent snowstorms and built ice creatures that lurked in the shadows. To her, this was not terrifying, but a promise of something greater, the possibility of shaping the world to her will, one snowflake at a time. One day, in a final display of power, Elsa grew tired of the limitations imposed by her parents. In a cold and calculated gesture, she froze both of their hearts, watching impassively as their lives ebbed away, turning them into ice statues. Now, with no barriers left, she proclaimed herself the Ice Queen, rising as the sole ruler of Arendelle. Unlike the story you know, there were no tears or exile here. Elsa craved power, and she obtained it with a cold smile on her lips. Now, Elsa was the Ice Queen, and her reign had only just begun. With her parents turned into cold, lifeless statues, the castle of Arendelle became a palace of desolation. Where once there were tapestries and fireplaces, there were now walls of ice and crystal chandeliers, with labyrinths of snow mirrors that confused those who dared to enter. Elsa had no interest in ruling through love or acceptance. She believed that fear was the only true form of control. The lands surrounding Arendelle soon became desolate, with rivers frozen and vegetation suffocated under thick layers of snow. The villages, once filled with colors and voices, were now engulfed in silence, as if the world itself had lost the will to fight against the cold Elsa brought with her. But Elsa wasn't satisfied with simply turning the kingdom into an ice graveyard. She decided to mold her army. Ice creatures emerged from her magic, soldiers as cold as the snow itself, soulless beings that obeyed her commands blindly. The presence of these creatures wasn't just for protection, but a constant reminder of Elsa's absolute power. They patrolled every corner, ensuring that there were no whispers of rebellion, no traces of human warmth that could survive. The more winter dominated, the more Elsa felt power flowing through her veins like a river of ice. She isolated herself on her crystal throne, an imposing and menacing structure situated in the heart of her ice castle. The winds blowing around the castle were like incessant laments, almost as if nature itself was mourning the queen's oppression. And so, as the world around sank into an endless winter, Elsa felt a sadistic pleasure in her solitary reign. She did not long for companionship or redemption. All she desired was to see the world kneel, submissive and covered in eternal ice. Eternal winter wasn't enough for Elsa. Her desire for control and dominion grew like a ravenous frost, spreading throughout the world around her. She knew that Arendelle was just the beginning. To become a true dark ice queen, she needed more. So, she began her campaign of conquest, launching a series of attacks against neighboring kingdoms. The invasion was swift and brutal. In a matter of days, entire villages were buried under devastating blizzards, while ice soldiers marched mercilessly, destroying what remained of life and warmth. Terror spread like the icy wind, and with it, a name, Queen of Cold Death. The title was well-deserved, as Elsa's presence on the battlefields was both majestic and terrifying. She appeared shrouded in a cloak of black snow, her eyes gleaming like ice crystals as she unleashed freezing blasts that turned men into brittle statues. Her ice castle became a symbol of her power, but now Elsa wanted a frozen empire. Each conquered kingdom was another piece of her throne, another extension of her power. The kings and queens who opposed her were crushed, and their castles turned into ice fortresses covered with crystalline thorns that reflected the light of a pale, weak sun, as if even it had given up fighting against the cold. But it wasn't just physical power that the Ice Queen mastered. Elsa began to manipulate the minds of the defeated kingdom's inhabitants. She sent icy dreams, visions of an endless winter where hope melted away slowly until it disappeared. Elsa's magic was no longer just control over the cold. but a psychological weapon, a way to crush the spirits of her enemies and turn them into servants of her will. The inhabitants of the fallen kingdom spoke in whispers about the Queen of Cold Death, some believing she was an immortal entity, a goddess born from the darkest winter. Others said she was a vengeful spirit, a creature who had sacrificed her humanity in exchange for power. But Elsa didn't care what they said. To her, each conquest, each frozen village, was just another step toward total domination. While Elsa ravaged kingdoms and spread her ice rain, a figure emerged from the shadows as a beacon of resistance. Anna, the last princess of Arendelle. She wasn't Elsa's sister in this version, but an orphan from the very kingdom Elsa had taken. Her parents were killed during Elsa's rise to power, and since then, Anna had grown up among the ruins of a frozen world, driven by a burning desire for revenge. Anna wasn't a delicate princess, raised among rebels hiding in the frozen forests. She became a relentless warrior, hardened by the harsh cold and fueled by pure hatred for the Ice Queen. She carried a pendant that belonged to her mother, a symbol of warmth and hope that she swore to protect at any cost. Unlike other rebel leaders who feared Elsa as an invincible force, Anna saw in the Ice Queen a tyrant who needed to be overthrown. Her spirit was indomitable, a flame that refused to be extinguished even in the most adverse conditions. Where Elsa ruled with cold, Anna responded with an inner fire that warmed those around her. She organized small rebel groups to sabotage Elsa's forces, leading swift and ruthless attacks against the ice soldiers and frozen fortresses. However, Anna knew that defeating Elsa wouldn't be just a matter of brute force. It was a battle of will. She needed to find a way to break the icy magic Elsa used to control the world. In her desperate search for a solution, Anna found an ancient grimoire that spoke of the Fire of Yggdrasil, a magical flame capable of melting even the coldest of hearts. It was a dangerous legend, but Anna was willing to risk everything to obtain it. Anna became a symbol of hope for the oppressed, a figure of human warmth in a world covered by snow and despair. While Elsa grew colder and more distant, Anna seemed to radiate more strength and determination, as if her heart were constantly ablaze. For her, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about restoring life to a world that had been suffocated by ice. The first encounter between Elsa and Anna happened from afar, on a frozen plain covered by a dense blizzard. Elsa watched Anna from a distance, intrigued by the young warrior who dared to confront her. Anna, in turn, shivered at the sight of the majestic and terrifying figure of the Ice Queen. There, Anna made a silent vow. She would defeat Elsa, no matter the cost. Anna and her rebels marched toward the Ice Abyss Mountains, a desolate region where Elsa concentrated her darkest powers. It was the heart of the frozen realm, a place of cutting winds and constant storms, where the very ground was a field of natural traps, with treacherous crevices and cliffs shrouded in snow mists. This would be the scene of the first major clash between the two forces. On one side, Elsa, cloaked in her black ice cape, watched impassively as the resistance advanced, her eyes gleaming with hatred and contempt. On the other side, Anna, determined and with the flame of hope burning inside her, led her soldiers with courage. The landscape seemed to respond to the hatred between them, with the sky gray and the snow falling oppressively, as if the world were caught between the opposing forces of heat and cold. The clash began like a violent storm. Anna advanced with her sword, facing ice soldiers who shattered into crystal shards under her blows. Elsa, on the other hand, controlled the snow as if it were an extension of herself, unleashing cutting gusts that turned the battlefield into a white hell. Both women were equally stubborn, but the difference in power was noticeable. Elsa was a true entity of winter, while Anna was a human warrior. But Anna didn't give up. Amidst the chaos, she shouted at Elsa, "You're not a goddess, just a selfish and cruel woman." For a moment, Elsa's icy demeanor was shaken by the intensity of Anna's courage. A cold smile appeared on her lips, as if she were fascinated by someone with such bravery before her overwhelming power. "Do you really believe you can stop me, you little fool?" Elsa responded, as she created a snow tornado around Anna, trying to trap her. But Anna, with her indomitable spirit, used the force of the tornado to propel her advance, breaking through the ice barriers and getting closer to Elsa. The confrontation was now direct, human warmth against relentless cold. Anna managed to wound Elsa, slashing her arm with her sword. Icy blue blood flowed from the wound, and Elsa, enraged, unleashed a burst of magic so powerful that it cracked the ground around them, creating a black and deep abyss. Anna almost fell but clung to an ice ledge, precariously hanging. Elsa, instead of helping, looked down with disdain, slowly raising an ice spear, ready to end the fight once and for all. But Anna, in a final desperate effort, pulled out her mother's pendant and held it up in front of Elsa. A warmth emanated from the amulet, forcing Elsa to retreat for a moment. It was the first time the Ice Queen had truly felt the fear of defeat. Anna climbed back onto the battlefield and faced Elsa, knowing this was only the first of many battles between them. Elsa, furious, retreated to her castle, aware that Anna was no ordinary opponent. After the confrontation at the ice abyss, Elsa returned to her castle, wounded and enraged. Anna's presence wasn't just a physical threat. There was something about the warrior that disturbed the essence of the Ice Queen. As she healed, Elsa began to feel an unfamiliar presence in her palace. The air around her seemed denser, as if something was trying to penetrate her mind. Then the visions began. In her moments of solitude, Elsa was haunted by images of a past she thought she had buried under layers of snow and ice. She saw herself as a young girl, before becoming the Ice Queen, during times of lost innocence. Visions of herself laughing in the sun, feeling the warmth of spring, and even embracing her parents, something that now seemed impossible. Each image brought with it a sharp pain, a sense of humanity she had sacrificed for power. These visions weren't just mere fragments of the past. They were accompanied by whispering voices, almost like echoes of an Elsa that could have been. "You could be loved," the voices said. "You don't have to be just ice and darkness." But Elsa, hardened by her hatred and ambition, tried to push these images and voices away, insisting to herself that love was a weakness and that humanity had only betrayed her. However, doubt began to gnaw at her frozen heart, like an imperceptible crack in a perfect ice crystal. For the first time, Elsa started to question her purpose. Why did she crave power so much? Was there a void she was trying to fill with her domination? The questions didn't stop, and the more Elsa tried to suppress them, the stronger the internal conflict became. But then came a specific vision, clearer and more vivid than all the others. An image of Elsa as a child, reaching out to a female figure enveloped in warmth and light. The figure was indistinct, but Elsa felt an inexplicable attraction to it, as if it represented everything she had lost. Was this the ghost of her former humanity, or a desperate attempt by her subconscious to bring her back from the darkness? Elsa knew these visions were dangerous. The more she allowed doubt to enter, the more vulnerable she would become to her enemies, especially Anna. But deep within her frozen heart, there was a feeling she couldn't completely crush, a dark curiosity about what it would be like if, just for a moment, she surrendered to warmth. However, instead of yielding, Elsa made a vow to herself. She would not be defeated by useless feelings. She let the ice reinforce her inner walls, turning her cracks into frozen spikes. Whatever remained of her humanity would be used as fuel for her desire to conquer everything and everyone. The doubt and the visions of her human past were not enough to change Elsa. On the contrary, they only served to reaffirm her belief that weakness needed to be eradicated once and for all. Determined to crush any trace of warmth in her heart and become an immortal entity, Elsa began to seek a darker, older magic, the Eternal Frost, a mythical power that promised immortality and absolute control over winter. Deep within her ice castle, Elsa discovered an ancient spellbook, written in a forgotten language. The pages of the grimoire were covered by a thin layer of ice, and the book's touch was so cold that it burned. According to legends, the ritual to achieve the Eternal Frost required a supreme sacrifice, the sorcerer's own humanity. Elsa, without hesitation, prepared to perform the ritual in the heart of her castle, in a secret chamber filled with black crystals that absorbed light. Around her, ancestral symbols were etched into the ice with blue fire, creating a terrifying contrast. At the center, Elsa knelt before a black ice mirror that reflected not only her image, but also her darkest fears and desires. With a cold, impassive voice, Elsa began to chant the spell's words. The temperature around her dropped drastically, and the ice magic gathered around her like a dense blue mist. Elsa knew she was about to sacrifice her last drop of humanity. "Love is a weakness," she whispered to herself, like a mantra, as the ice began to seep into her veins, turning her blood into a gleaming, icy substance. The ritual was almost complete, but then the black ice mirror reacted unexpectedly. It didn't just reflect Elsa. It began to distort her image, revealing a grotesque, inhuman figure. Her eyes now shone with a fierce, cruel blue, and her skin, once merely pale, turned almost translucent, as if the cold itself had taken hold of her soul. Elsa felt a wave of absolute power surge through her body, a frigid force that crushed any trace of warmth within her. She was no longer just a queen. She had become the eternal frost itself, a heartless, soulless creature, an entity of pure ice and darkness. The ritual had worked perfectly. Elsa now possessed the power to maintain the world in endless winter, a despair that suffocated even the faintest ray of hope. And so, Elsa emerged from the ritual more powerful and colder than ever. Her appearance had changed. Her hair was now a spectral white, her eyes gleamed like sharp ice crystals, and her touch was as deadly as the hardest frost. The winds around her grew fiercer, howling in sync with her presence, as if the world itself acknowledged her new form. But deep in her mind, a whisper persisted, barely audible. A familiar voice saying, "There's still warmth in you." Elsa, however, ignored the whisper, focused solely on her mission to spread eternal frost to every corner of the world. Anna, realizing that the ritual was completed and that Elsa had now become an entity of pure ice, understood that she could not defeat Elsa with physical strength or common weapons. Elsa was no longer just a queen, but a force of nature, immortal and almost intangible. Anna's hopes were pinned on her last discovery, the legendary flame of Yggdrasil, an ancient magic that, according to legends, could restore the balance between eternal frost and the warmth of life. Anna knew that to summon this flame, a sacrifice of equivalent intensity to the power she sought to combat, was needed: her own heart. The flame of Yggdrasil required the blood of someone whose essence was genuinely warm and human, and Anna was willing to sacrifice herself if it meant a chance to defeat Elsa and restore life to Arendelle. When Anna finally reached Elsa's castle, the place was darker than ever. The ice walls were now black as night, and Elsa's presence permeated the air like an oppressive cold. In the heart of the castle, Elsa awaited, majestic and terrifying, completely enveloped in a shimmering blue ice aura. Upon seeing Anna, Elsa smiled, but it was not a human smile. It was the cruel smile of an entity that no longer knew compassion. Anna, trembling from the cold and fear, faced Elsa and held up her mother's pendant, now warmed by the flame of Yggdrasil that she had awakened with her own blood. The flame was small, but intense, radiating a heat so powerful that the ice around it began to melt slowly, something that had not happened inside the castle for a long time. "Elsa, you don't have to be this," Anna said, in a final attempt to reach the Ice Queen's lost humanity, but Elsa only laughed, a sound resembling the cracking of breaking ice. "Love is a weakness, Anna. You should know that by now," Elsa replied, preparing to unleash a final blast of icy magic. At that moment, Anna made a definitive decision. She lunged toward Elsa, knowing there was no turning back. She opened her arms and threw herself upon Elsa, embracing her with all the strength that remained in her body. The flame of Yggdrasil, fueled by Anna's sacrifice, exploded in an intense heat, like a wave of warmth in an ice desert. Elsa tried to break free, but Anna held on to her with all her determination, her warm blood touching Elsa's icy skin. The heat was unbearable for Elsa. She felt as if the ice in her body was being melted from the inside out, and, for a brief and tragic moment, Elsa felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: true warmth. Not the kind that hurt her, but the kind that reminded her of who she might have been. The flame of Yggdrasil grew as Anna gave her last strength, and the ice around began to crack and melt. Elsa felt overwhelming pain, but also a strange sense of relief, as if a part of her had been waiting for this. But before she could be completely consumed by the warmth, Elsa gathered all the remaining magic in her body and unleashed one final icy blast, breaking Anna's embrace. Anna fell to the ground, her eyes slowly closing as the last bit of warmth escaped her body. She had given everything to try to save Elsa, but the Ice Queen was a force too powerful. However, the crack in Elsa's heart was now visible, a sign that Anna's sacrifice had left a mark. Elsa, feeling a deep and unfamiliar pain, fell to her knees beside Anna's body. Anna's body lay lifeless on the frozen ground, surrounded by a residual warmth that sharply contrasted with the coldness of the castle. Elsa, still kneeling beside her, felt something she hadn't recognized in a long time: a deep inner pain. The crack in Elsa's heart, caused by Anna's sacrifice, was not just symbolic. It was a literal fracture in her essence of ice. For the first time, tears began to flow down Elsa's face, But unlike normal tears, hers were ice crystals that shattered upon hitting the ground. Elsa was torn between the immense power she had gained and a devastating sense of loss. Anna's death struck her like a blow that not even the eternal frost could withstand. For a brief moment, Elsa wondered if the love she had always rejected could have actually been a form of strength that she never understood. But Anna's sacrifice had triggered more than just cracks in Elsa's heart. The flame of Yggdrasil, still resonating with Anna's final warmth, began to spread through the castle, turning ice into water and darkness into soft light. Elsa tried to control the process, but her power, even with the eternal frost, was weakened. The cracks in her heart grew deeper, and the warmth of the flame threatened to consume what remained of her corrupted humanity. As the castle collapsed around her, Elsa felt more vulnerable than ever before. In one last desperate effort, she tried to channel the eternal frost to restore her absolute control, but the power was now divided by her inner conflict. The ice refused to obey fully, as if the magic itself hesitated, reflecting Elsa's uncertainty. As the melted water flowed across the floor, Elsa looked at Anna's body and murmured with a trembling and, for the first time, sincere voice, "I'm sorry," but the confession came too late. The flame of Yggdrasil consumed the deepest ice within Elsa, leaving her standing but almost powerless. Elsa was still powerful, but now she felt an intrinsic weakness, as if Anna's sacrifice had left an indelible scar on her soul. And so, as the ice castle finally crumbled around her, Elsa was not completely destroyed, but neither was she victorious. She was still the Ice Queen, but now with a partially melted heart, something she considered a vulnerability. Elsa did not seek redemption, but neither did she find the peace she so desired. She vanished into the frozen mountains, where the cold winds still sang her name, but now accompanied by a persistent whisper, the echo of Anna's sacrifice. The winter still lingered, but it was no longer absolute. Small ice flowers began to bloom, a belated testament to Anna's final act of love. The kingdom did not return to what it once was, but a new kind of hope timidly sprouted among the ice, a less cruel winter, as if the eternal frost had been partially broken. Elsa, solitary and consumed by pain and power, became an ambiguous legend, an immortal queen with a cracked heart, both a monster and a victim of her own ambition. And thus, we reach the end of this alternate version of Elsa, the evil Ice Queen. This is the dark outcome of what Elsa could have been if Disney had followed its original idea during the early production of Frozen. Originally, Elsa was to be presented as a ruthless villain, a self-proclaimed Snow Queen, with no sisterly bond with Anna. She would be a dark figure, inspired by the cruel Snow Queen from Hans Christian Andersen's classic tale, driven solely by her thirst for power and absolute domination. However, throughout the creative process, Disney decided to change Elsa's narrative, transforming her from an antagonist into a complex and tragic character, struggling to control her powers and protect her sister. Instead of being a symbol of cruelty and darkness, Elsa became a more empathetic figure, whose journey is marked by fear and isolation, but also by love and redemption. But if the story had followed this dark and icy path, Elsa would have become an icon of terror and dominion, closer to a vengeful goddess than a heroine. This version is a window into what Frozen could have been, not a story of love and redemption, but a cold tragedy of ambition and sacrifice, where absolute power would bring the downfall of both Elsa and the world around her. So, this is what we could have seen in theaters if Elsa had truly embraced the dark side.